Thank you for attending. Michelle, if you would call the roll.
Marshall Scott Collier.
Here.
Board member Denny Welker.
Here.
Vince Loyal.
Here.
Jeff Baker.
Here.
Council Liaison Dave Bertolino.
Here.
All right. And then also present, we have Captain Jim Mundell, Sergeant Brad Wendeling, and Rick Brown, Director of Public Works, and Steve Cross, City Administrator. I think that's oh, and we also have Battalion Chief Joe Hafer of the Metro Fire District.
Great. Okay, first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. We'll go in reverse calendar order because we have two minutes to approve. We'll start with the last meeting, June 9th. I hope everyone has had an opportunity to review the minutes. Does anyone have any additions, corrections, or other changes they would like to suggest? Hearing none, I'll assume that means we will accept the minutes unless there is an objection. Hearing none, the minutes are accepted. Now we also have to approve the January 7 minutes, and I believe that is because we forgot to do it earlier in the year because we had skipped a meeting, I think. Is that correct?
We did not have a quorum at the April meeting,
Okay.
and so this is why
All right.
this was only recently remembered.
Okay. Well, we're going to take care of it now. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at the meetings, the minutes from January 7th. For those who were present and have a vague recollection of the meeting, would anyone like to make any suggestions or corrections? Nope. Okay. Hearing none. I will assume then that we will accept the minutes without objection. If anyone has an objection, speak now or forever hold your peace.
I have no objection, but I will abstain, having not been a member of the committee.
Fair enough. So noted. All right, January minutes are accepted. And now we move into the public comment section. Rick, Michelle, do we have anyone in the queue?
I don't see anybody in attendance that looks like they're here, or anybody, frankly, viewing other than the members.
Okay, very good. Well, they're missing a scintillating evening. You know
They are.
So, all right then. But if anyone does show up, we'll be sure and reach out to them, see if they have any questions during the meeting. And oh, just in case anyone's wondering, it's Coke Zero. Nothing added.
Too bad. We were hoping for a better meeting.
Well, honesty is the best policy. So moving on, for information, we have an update on Truman Road.
Mr. Marshall and board members wanted to bring this back to you tonight. It has been in front of you fairly recently ago, so I think most of you are familiar with the issue at Truman Road and West Glen Farms Drive. There has been a recommendation put forth to enact a left turn restriction for westbound Truman Road traffic, vehicles that want to turn left onto West Glen Farms Drive. At the previous meetings, we've discussed this issue, and the department has raised some concerns relative to enacting that restriction at that intersection. And I've kind of tried to summarize them in my memorandum that I put forth for the meeting tonight. But I think the bottom line at this point is the department, after thinking and giving this more thought and consideration, is feeling that it would be very, very beneficial to hire a consultant to do a traffic study to evaluate this location in more detail, and specifically to evaluate the potential impacts for the left turn restriction and look at that area for possible improvements that might also be implemented or otherwise be implemented. So I have provided with the memorandum, a proposal from Lockmuller Group. It's a local firm that we've worked with previously. And we're actually working with currently across the road on our resurfacing and signal improvement project. And they have proposed to do the traffic study. The cost is about $9,500, I believe. So we've got that prepared for the approval of our city administrator, Steve Cross, but I wanted to bring it to you and let you know that that was the direction we were intending to go, assuming there was no concerns to the contrary from the board. I did also include in my memorandum a recent traffic count we also took to help provide a little more data relative to this issue. That traffic count will be Lockmuller in their traffic study to assess the impacts of such a left turn restriction at that location. So with that, I'll turn it over if there's any questions from the board at this time.
Vince, I think, did you have a question?
Forgive me, I don't know the background. Where did the recommendation come that we consider limiting a left turn there? What's the background there?
Well, I think more recently it's come from Councilmember Dodwell, and I think more recent than that, Councilmember Farmer have raised this issue. I believe it's been a long-standing concern. I think it's been in front of the Board of Public Safety previously to this most recent go-round. Mr. Bernalino might remember that as well. Mm-hmm. So it's a long-standing issue, unfortunately, and I think the reality is there probably isn't a real simple solution to the problems there. But if we can,
I guess that's my question is, you gave a very good memorandum on the rationale of the department's thoughts on holding off on implementing a left turn prohibition. I'm just concerned about spending close to $10,000 to confirm what you already believe to be true, but that's just my thoughts.
Well, understood. And I appreciate that. I think from my perspective, it's a challenging issue, and I know it's an ongoing issue that's not going to go away. So I felt like, you know, if we went forward with the restriction, this could, if it concurs with that recommendation, it'd give us additional support for moving forward with it. If they say it's a bad idea and they have another recommendation, then that might point us in a better direction, another direction that we could consider.
Steve, please.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vince, a little bit more background to what Rick just mentioned. It was brought up in a couple work sessions. Katie Dodwell and Joe Farmer are very passionate about this, have been very vocal about the problems at that intersection in terms of people that are westbound on Truman and trying then to turn southbound on West Glen Farms to ultimately get either east or westbound on 100. Rick and I actually, after the last council meeting or the one before, I forget when it was brought up, but we called Joe Farmer and had a discussion because Rick and I had talked about it, and Rick kind of laid out what, you know, it's a little problematic. It's not as simple as just putting in a no left turn sign there. There's other issues. So we discussed it with Joe Farmer, hoping that maybe it wasn't quite as problematic as he discussed it at a work session, but he held firm to that and really, you know, really felt that we need to take this further and bring it to the committee and perhaps do a traffic study. We don't have to do the traffic study. I know that, you know, Rick likes to lead with data, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever, but it is a $9,500 expenditure. So if you know, if the this board has another solution in terms of how we might approach this problem, but it is something that we're going to have to deal with. You know, the captain has weighed in that, you know, the statistics show there's not been any accidents there, much less any fatal accidents. It's just somewhat of an inconvenience. But you know, we're certainly going to defer to this group in terms of how we might address it. We're going to have to do something. And so, you know, Rick thought perhaps a traffic study might lend more credence to going back, and perhaps the traffic study says it's not an issue, and therefore we don't need to do anything. But the price of the mission to be able to have that ammunition is $9,500. So that's a little more background, Vince, if that helps you any in terms of your understanding of why we got to where we are right now.
Sure. I appreciate it. The only other question I had before Dave chimes in is, would the study also include other possible solutions, or is it just isolated to the study of that left turn?
No, my goal is that, yes, they would also look at other potential solutions.
Okay.
In that area, because it is problematic. Access to and from Truman is challenging at times.
You know, if all they're doing is counting cars, I would probably be opposed, but if they're willing to offer other solutions, then I can support it. Thank you.
Dave?
Now, the one issue though that we really should talk about is this is a situation that occurs only when there are games going on at the ball field and people are trying to exit that area. On a daily basis, at any point in time, it doesn't seem to be very problematic. But certainly at those times during the summer months in particular, obviously when there's games going on, that seems to be, the source of the problem.
Dave?
Yeah, two things on this. One, Rick, is first of all, the study is necessary because data outweighs opinion in my mind. And if you don't have the data, you just can't win an argument in most cases. So let's get the data. The two questions for Rick. One is, where does MoDOT play in this? I mean, it's a MoDOT intersection, but are we at liberty to do whatever we want to do with that intersection at Truman? Or do we have to get approval from MoDOT to make any changes? That's a big concern of mine. The second thing is, I think the data will show that that intersection at commuting time, not just at ballpark time, but at commuting time from like 7 to 8 in the morning, it is an issue. It's an issue every time people are commuting to work. So it's I think, Steve, it's a little bit bigger than just when the ball games are over, kind of thing. So we really do need to address it finally,
Yeah, Mr. Bertolino, yes, and that is a key point that the board should be aware of. Again, the intersection is under the jurisdiction of MoDOT. So any changes have to go through MoDOT and get their approval. But I would expect a traffic study done by Lockmuir, who is well respected at MoDOT, would be highly supported and I think would be very valuable to making a case of any potential changes. So I think it would be favorable from that perspective. And as far as the count goes, yeah, I would look at if you do look at the PM count, I was looking at that earlier tonight, frankly, in the data that I provided you. In the numbers, the left turns, that westbound left is about half of what it was during the 7 to 8 p.m. hour, but the traffic on West Glen Farms is much higher in the PM peak, say 5 to 6 o'clock. So you can make that argument that it does overlap into the afternoon, I'm sure, but it's worse, no doubt, I think, when those ball games are going on, which is predominantly the summer and the weekends, perhaps, and evenings. But
Yes, Denny, please.
I just wanted to weigh in and say I think getting that traffic study done is money well spent. And we could probably I would imagine we could probably take that and take it right into preliminary design if there's an alternative we like that's going to solve the problem. So I would certainly support getting the traffic study done and getting the data.
Yeah. Please, Steve.
Thank you. One of the things that Rick and I did not talk about, and maybe we can bring it up here, this would be a question for Sergeant Wendling or for the captain. If we do go forward and put in a no left turn there, how are we going to enforce that?
Well, that's a very good point. it's a busy intersection, so to try and drop a cop in the middle of it is a challenge. Brad and I were just kind of talking offline a little bit. Maybe before we go forward with the traffic study, if we could pinpoint better timeframes, because making it a permanent solution, no left turns, then that means no left turns ever. If we're talking about certain timeframes, restricted to those timeframes, rush hour between 7 and 9 and 4 to 6, whatever the times would be. Rick, I think we talked before about having some kind of a traffic. Is there a traffic camera? Did you have something that you could monitor where we could just see really what the issues are and what the timeframes are, without causing another issue? Concentrate on what the specific issue is.
So we actually, when we took the traffic count, we used our MyVision camera, and the way that system operates, it takes video of the intersection, and then the video is uploaded, and there's a process by which they count. They tell us they do it automatically. They count the vehicles from the video. So we do have that available, and the video is basically 24 hours of the day. So we can come up with numbers for every hour, every 15-minute interval during the course of the day. And that would be something that Lockmuir would use, and I would expect that they would, and we could certainly direct them that way. If they are saying that they feel that the left turn restriction makes sense, I think that's a valid point that, if it's something we're going to consider, do we look at specific periods of the day? And that should be something, or my expectation would be that'd be something they would look into and provide that recommendation to us. But we do have those numbers available in the count as well that we could certainly pull out and look at that hard data ourselves, if you'd like to do that.
I'm just looking for options before we bring in a consultant, and I think Dave kind of hit it there, that are you spending money to make a recommendation to MoDOT and they are not going to respond to it? So are you basically wasting the money because they disagree with the conclusion regardless? So I don't know what their answer would be. I know we kind of touched on it with Ryan, but didn't really get much of an answer about it.
Yes, and I would say, based on the discussions I've had with Ryan thus far, they haven't taken a position to oppose the left turn. So I think if the study shows that if Lockmuir supports that recommendation, I think so far the indication is MoDOT would not oppose it. So that's the indication I am getting from them currently. Again, keep in mind the study is not just going to focus on that left turn restriction, but I've asked them to look at other improvements that might make sense. And that would be, looking at those Truman Road, could it be converted to one way only, potentially? Is there a better way essentially to encourage access to and from Route 100 versus what's currently being done? I don't know if there's a solution there. I've looked at it myself pretty hard, haven't come up with something that's easily implementable. So I'm hoping they'll have some ideas, some fresh perspective. They may have some good ideas that might be implementable.
Vince?
Clarification, is the problem with people on Autumn View Terrace or Truman Road? I'm not sure exactly. I mean, I understand when a ball game was out, there's going to be a high concentration of traffic, but where is the problem occurring that we're even addressing it? I'm just trying to figure that out. Because Autumn View Drive is in Ellisville, and most of Truman, where the problem's originating, is in Ellisville. I'm not quite sure what the issue is. Is it backup of traffic?
Well, the concern that as I understand it, is the traffic on Truman Road at West Glen Farms, the westbound vehicles that want to turn left. There's basically the southbound West Glen Farms traffic queues up at the signal, And that line of cars backs up through Truman Road. So it blocks off any ability to make a left from Truman onto West Glen Farms. And that frustrates the drivers behind those guys that are wanting to turn right because they can't get around it. It's one lane, it's a one lane approach. So there's one car, if they're wanting to go left, they can't go left. If there's a right turner behind them, they get frustrated. The other nuance that's been reported is that you get folks that try to force their way in, or they pull out into traffic or block West Glen Farms in the other direction.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else have any questions or concerns? Apparently my dog's chiming in.
So just confirming, it's the
Republican.
recommendation of
Spending.
the Director of Public Works that we fund this study. Is that correct?
So I think the department, if the board would like to make a motion in support of it, that would be helpful. The cost is under the $10,000 ceiling. So in theory, the city administrator could approve it and move forward. However, I'm sure Mr. Cross would agree that if the board wants to make a motion supporting going forward with the traffic study, that certainly wouldn't be a bad idea.
So moved.
But Vince, to answer your question, Vince, yes, the Director of Public Works is in fact recommending that we go forward with the traffic study.
Yes, that's correct.
And I will make a recommendation that we proceed with the traffic study as recommended by the Director of Public Works.
A second.
Great, there's been a motion and a second to support. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye or raise your
Aye.
hand. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, make your voice heard. Nope. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Good discussion. Okay. I don't see any old business on the agenda. Is that correct? Therefore, we'll move on to new business, the 2020 vehicle crash analysis draft report. Rick or Captain Mundell?
I think I'm gonna, well, I'll just say a couple of quick comments if that's okay, but to the board members who may not be as familiar, every year the Wildwood Precinct put together an annual analysis of roadway crashes in the city of Wildwood, and that's something that's actually required, I think, through either the charter or ordinance, I forget which. So they typically put that together in about this time of year, and we present it to the board for your review and discussion and comment. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Captain Mundell, if that's okay.
Sure. Well, certainly there's a lot to it. And I apologize, it was kind of late getting it to Rick. We had some technical difficulties. I kept sending it to him and he wasn't getting it. Thanks to our defenses that we have in place in our computer systems, I think. Overall, from 19 to 20, there was a reduction of about 17% in our crashes. So that's kind of consistent across all the roadways. We typically, kind of concentrate on our five big roads: 100, 109, Old State, the other one, chime in, Brad, Clayton Road, and Manchester Road, which is not 100. So the crash trends have been going down over the past several years. We made it through 2020 with no fatal crashes in Wildwood. Kind of an accomplishment. There's no way to take credit for it, but none happened. So that was a good thing. 2020 obviously was an odd year that traffic was not the norm. For a while there was a lockdown. Everybody was staying home from work, staying home from school. So traffic volume dropped dramatically. So that probably accounts for our number drops. As things kind of opened up toward the end of the year, then things kind of start returning back to normal as far as, traffic. So, so those numbers fluctuated a little bit, but overall, there was a decrease. We did notice, and it's something that we're going to work on, that there was an increase on Old State Road for some reason. So we're going to work with the County Highway Department, County Department of Transportation, to have them or work together to see if there's a pavement issue, because it seems like that's occurring when there's weather, basically rain or what have you. So there could be a pavement problem that they need to address through construction or changing the surface in some way, which they can do, make it a little more rough so that it's got better traction. So that's something we're going to work on here in the near future. I'm not sure if they would see it as of yet. We look at the data probably faster than the county would, or the county highway department would. So we can bring it to their attention, see if they can address it faster. Beyond that, deer strikes are still an issue. That'll never go away, I'm sure. The report is still in draft form. There was some kind of a glitch. If you look at like pages 5 and 6, where it like transferred numbers, a one crash at every location. So obviously those numbers are wrong. It populated with a 1 and didn't transfer the actual data. But as you get further into the report, then it is showing the proper numbers. So 1706 once that's finalized, that's what we will provide to you and to Rick, and what Rick would post on the city's website with the other reports that are out there. So any questions, comments, concerns, things you'd maybe like us to look at just in general as opposed to what's specifically in the report? Dave, yes.
Yeah, Jim. I still hear from grumpy old men that they don't like roundabouts.
Make them go away. Rick, straighten them out.
Does your data at all support the assumption that roundabouts are safer than T intersections?
I guess that's debatable. We have had crashes in our roundabouts. They're low speeds, so the injuries are not happening, as opposed to intersections. There is one oddity, I think, that everybody has been complaining about. Who complains about roundabouts? There's one section, and it's on the south at 109 and 100, the South Circle. If you're going southbound and you want to go east on 100, right, there's a very short space there to transition over while someone who's coming northbound is there. So I think we've kind of pinpointed that that's where the people that have a bad experience have it there, whether it's a close call or someone cutting them off, that type of thing. I don't think we've had a lot of crashes there. It's just the stories that come out of that, hey, this isn't designed right, or it's not labeled right. It probably is labeled right. It's just there's not enough physical space to make transitions while you're in a turn, you're changing lanes, and you're merging with other traffic kind of all in about 100 feet. So beyond that, I think the positive thing is that the injuries are not happening like they would have before. Yeah. But we do have the fender benders from the misunderstandings, I think, that go on there. And that the city's done a good job. They've put information out there, on the website. You can't go flying through the roundabout.
Right.
You have to be attentive because you kind of have traffic coming at you from unusual angles in a circle as opposed to a 90-degree intersection. So
Good, thanks.
Okay. Go ahead, Steve.
I think with regards to that roundabout, I think the biggest issue there, Captain, is the northbound traffic on 109 doesn't yield. They don't know which lane you're in, and they come through and they think they can just go ahead and get in the outer lane, and you're trying to cross that lane to go eastbound on 100. The problem is those people, because you don't know if they're going to stop or not. That's a problem there. Now, the question I have for you, you mentioned about there was an uptick in accidents on Old State Road. I'm curious, do you, the locations, is it before you cut off on Old State Spur to head down towards 109? Is it, between there and Manchester, or is it down in the windy section as you're traveling roughly southbound to get down there? Where is that increase in accidents occurring?
I'll answer if you want. You got.
Go ahead. It's on the southern.
Yeah, it's in between St. James Place and Red Tail Hawk, just in that short stretch. So there's a notable increase, and all the crashes were occurring when the road condition was wet. So the rain is definitely a contributing factor to these crashes also. So it's like why the captain said we believe it's related to the friction on the roadway, probably, that could be improved.
And probably the people driving a little too fast for the conditions too, because that's windy and blind turns and so forth. So the speed's got to contribute to that too, I would imagine.
Yes.
And usually that could be corrected fairly cheap, I believe, without repaving the whole road. They can go in there and do some grinding on the pavement to make it rough, as opposed to being weather or slick. Trying to think of the word we use. Traffic polish is the terminology that they use. We don't believe that pavement's that old. Actually, it was repaved maybe within the last 3 years or so, 5 years maybe. So that it would be unusual that there'd be a difference that quick, but that's we'll dump that in the county highways lap and let them deal with it. So anything else?
When do you expect to have the final version, Captain?
Oh, within right at this point, we're looking at numbers and typos, that type of stuff, within the next week or two at the most. Yeah, the product is pretty much done, so now it's just running through it to make sure it reads good. So
Tim, regarding your comments about the isolated increase in accidents on Old State, is there a benefit when the report comes out if this committee supports you submitting something to County Highway, perhaps to have improvements, as opposed to just being a document they receive? Or
no, I don't think so. Brad, do we normally give a copy of this to the County Highway?
We do, yes.
Okay.
I mean, do they say thank you very much and put it on the shelf? Or I mean, how do we follow up and make sure that next year we're not talking about the slick accidents on Old State Road?
Well, hopefully I have a rapport with our other department within county government that they're responsive. Certainly if I run into anything that aggravates me, I'll let you know.
And could you report back to us perhaps on the response you get regarding the report information? That would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I would hope that by our next meeting that I can tell you something, that hopefully they've done something in that short time frame. If we're looking at a month or 2 months down the road.
Because if you don't get the support that you're hoping for, then perhaps we can initiate something from our end to kind of push it up the chain a little bit.
Okay, well, I appreciate that offer. I think we can handle it informally at this point without anything, no formal letter or anything like that.
Great.
Okay. So you're still waiting on correction of some items, correct?
Yeah, there was that data transfer that certainly needs to be corrected so the numbers look right.
Okay. Then we'll wait for that one to give it the approval.
You want that back to the board to have a final blessing on it, or?
You want us to, if all we're doing is correcting typos and then that data crunch, I mean, we can see that as far as the data goes, I know the next table showed the correct numbers. I don't have a problem approving it if all we're doing is fixing those transpositions.
Yeah.
I'm open to dealing with that tonight and just giving you carte blanche to make the typo corrections.
And certainly it won't be, published or posted on the website, a city website, if it's not correct. So,
Okay.
thank you.
So would anyone care to make a motion to that effect? To approve?
I will make a motion that we approve the report from Captain Mundell with the caveat that he provide feedback on the response that county provides.
So motion on the floor. Is there a second? They've issued the second. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda, parking restrictions on Pond Road at Pond Ballpark.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. I'll start this one if that's okay. Board members, I'm meaning to bring this to you for a while now, but recent activities at the Pond Ballpark have kind of created an urgency to move this forward. If you're not aware of where Pond Athletic Association is located, it's about 0.8 of a mile north of Route 100 on Pond Road, right along Bonham Creek, is where the ball fields are located. And this being the summer where they play a lot of baseball and softball, what happens at the ballpark is they have a tournament over the weekend and we get a call to put up additional, or really the Wildwood Precinct gets a call to put up additional temporary no parking signs in the vicinity of the ballpark. And I think it's done along Pond Road, and separately it's also done, I believe, along the 2 private streets in Portland Cove subdivision. But the focus of this request is really Pond Road. And looking at this situation again this year with the Wildwood Precinct, the department wants to kind of formalize and enact parking restrictions on Pond Road that are really currently not in place. The department, I guess over time, there have been no parking signs installed on Pond Road in the vicinity of the ballpark to discourage traffic at any time, frankly. But in evaluating this situation, it's come to my attention that there is, not to my knowledge, an ordinance on the books, or that restriction is not currently in our traffic schedules. So the main purpose tonight is to bring this to you with a recommendation to formally adopt those parking restrictions on Pond Road in the vicinity of the ballpark. So those signs that we do have are enforceable. But secondarily, also look at, with the Wildwood Precinct, potentially adding no parking signs in that area if they are currently lacking. So that is the recommendation tonight, is to formally restrict parking on Pond Road in vicinity of the Pond Athletic Association, primarily from Portland Crest Court up through to Smith School Road, although I would like to evaluate that more specifically with the Wildwood Precinct, because that's probably a little bit overly aggressive, quite frankly. But I would like to get a motion from the board to move that forward. And if I do, I would present, working with the Wildwood Precinct, the enabling legislation to the full city council for subsequent approval. So with that, I'll certainly turn it back to any questions that the board may have.
Vince?
Rick, would you anticipate any opposition from the residents in the area from enacting this?
I don't believe so, Vince. I think that by and large, they would support this because frankly, when those cars park, they don't like to see that activity occurring. But I defer to Captain and Sergeant Wendling if you think otherwise. As I referenced, the other issue, and I think this is going to be ongoing, is we do have the situation where people try to park along the two subdivision streets, those private streets. And that's a little more difficult situation to manage, and that's where those temporary signs also come into play as well, because the residents don't want to see their streets restricted, so they can't use them and park on them themselves, frankly, but they do want to discourage all park traffic from parking in front of their residences. So, Captain or Sergeant, do you have anything additional to add in that regard?
I think you covered it pretty well. I mean, mostly the complaints in the past have been from the actual residents in the area there. So I don't think there will be any opposition to having permanent signs on Pond Road at all.
Yeah, my recollection from when my kids played ball over there, that there are no residents directly on that stretch of the road. They're all off the side roads, if I remember right. So
Yep.
That's a good point and a good question. Any other questions for Rick? If not, I would entertain a motion regarding the record. Denny? You're on mute. Still on mute.
Denny, I think you're still on mute.
I'm sorry. I was trying to mute a phone that was ringing in the background. Is there just not enough parking on the athletic facility? You know, in their parking lots, is that the problem, that it overflows under the road?
Yeah, when they have a tournament, and that's usually the only time it happens, which is a couple times a year. So you have a lot of people there for a game, and then they stay for additional games as more people come, and they just run out of parking space.
Okay.
We've done it twice now, where we've gone out and put out our temporary signs, and haven't had any complaints, as far as, people trying to find close parking further into the subdivisions, close by. So far, I don't think that's happened. So the temporary signs have worked. We make sure we're out and about up there, but the road is, it's winding. It's pretty narrow.
Yeah.
If they're going to try and park along the road, they're going to put some effort into trying to do it, except around the entrances to the subdivisions, where there's some grass, where it's flat. There's a temptation there to park on that grass along the road. So.
Okay, I was just curious.
Good question. So Rick has recommended approval of this plan. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So move.
Great, thank you, Vince. Is there a second? Thank you, Dave and Jeff. Any discussion? Okay, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of recommending this move forward, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Thank you.
And next item on the agenda also is at Pond Grove, down at Pond. So always stop.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall, board members. This is on Pond Grover, actually Parkway, off of Route 109, which was formerly Pond Grover Loop Road. Some of you may be aware, we actually have renamed it from the Loop Road to Parkway more recently. And that's what's in part spurring this request tonight. I think, as you know as well, the city opened a new pocket park at the terminus of Pond Grover Parkway just recently, or earlier this year, I believe. And with the opening of that park, it has come to our attention that there was no stop sign in place as you leave the park at the intersection with Pond Grover Parkway and Hickory Crest Drive and Green Pines Drive. So that's the intersection that's located basically at the terminus of Palm Grove Parkway on the eastern end of the road. So the request to you tonight, or the recommendation from the Department of Public Works, is kind of threefold. One is that we want to correct for the lack of a stop sign as you leave the park at that intersection. We'd like to install a stop. That would make that intersection a true all-way stop, because there are stop signs on the 3 other approaches to that intersection. The only one that is lacking currently is the approach as you leave the park at that intersection. So this would allow us to make it a true all-way stop intersection and correct that lack. The second part of this recommendation is just related to, again, when I researched this issue, it occurred to me that I realized that this restriction, the existing stops at that intersection, were also not included in our traffic schedules. So in theory, they are not enforceable. So I'd like to correct that deficiency as well at the same time. Essentially, it would be an all-way stop. All 4 legs would be required to stop, and that would be corrected through ordinance, assuming we move forward by the city council, and then that would be added to our traffic schedules as well. And finally, and maybe the least important, I'll have to check with our city attorney, but I want to make sure that I've clarified. I just mentioned that we renamed Palm Grove Loop Road to Palm Grove Parkway. I want to correct in the traffic schedules any reference to Palm Grove Loop Road at the same time. So I don't know what action I might need from the city council in that regard, but if I need to get an ordinance that makes that change to the traffic schedules, I would like to do that at the same time. So we do have all-way stops at least 3 other locations on Palm Grove Parkway. So I know that they are referenced in the traffic schedules, and they are described as Palm Grove Loop Road. So I'd like to correct those to read Palm Grove Parkway. So it's kind of 3 requests, but they're all related. I guess at this point, if there's any questions from the board, I'll be glad to address them.
Yes, Vince.
I guess it's more of a question for Dave. Dave, I know this is your new council district. Do you support this?
Yes, it's kind of like kissing your sister, Vince. It's we need it there because I can see at some point somebody pulling out of the parking area for the park and immediately say turning right or left, and another person coming through the intersection hits them in an accident, and the person coming out of the park saying, "Hey, I didn't have a stop sign, I had right away." So yeah, I think it's necessary to have the stop sign up there, and certainly let's make all the necessary administrative changes so that all of our ordinances are in compliance here with street names, etc.
Thank you.
Great.
I would make a motion that we approve the department head's recommendation.
Very good. Is there a second?
Okay.
There we go. Thank you, Jeff. We have a motion and a second to approve all 3 points of the recommendations made by Rick. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the 3 recommendations say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So moving on to the agenda, we have no items under not ready for action. Steve had suggested earlier that we could discuss changing the time. Just a quick poll. Would anyone have a problem if we move the meeting forward to say, Steve, were you saying 6 o'clock or 5:30 or?
It is entirely up to this group. If they want to change the start time at all, and if they do, whatever works for everybody. That could be 6 o'clock. It could be even as early as 5:30, as some committees do. But again, all committees are not created equal. So it's just what works for this group of folks here.
Okay. Would anyone have any concerns if we moved it ahead to 6 o'clock?
I would. Most of my meetings in between 5 and 5:36.
Okay.
So the 6:30 for me is perfect, but being on Zoom, I can pretty much pull to the side of the road if need be, if it works better for everyone else.
Okay. Which actually leads to the question I was going to ask tonight, just for information purposes. Is there a plan in the city to go back to in-person meetings, or are we going to stick with Zoom?
Well,
I don't think I have preference.
well, here's kind of what I'm looking at right now. First of all, the city still is under the emergency order that was issued by the governor. That's set to expire on August 28th. There's a very good likelihood, because of the raging new variant, the Delta variant, and what it's doing in Missouri. There's a good chance the governor could even extend that. But let's just say that he lets it expire on August 28th. At that point, the city would no longer be under the emergency order, and then that would trigger potentially several things. City Hall then could potentially be opened to where it's open and people can come in. I've had these discussions with the mayor. We've already moved to having council all meet, and we've been meeting now where everyone is up at the dais now. I had suggested, and I have to some committees, that, we might, it'd be up to the committee to decide if they wanted to continue under a Zoom format or if they wanted to meet in person. There are some that believe that the purpose that government should be open and meet in person. I don't know if we necessarily have to enforce that. I will tell you that the mayor believes that all meetings should be in person. The Zoom was an accommodation because of the pandemic, but it's his belief, or his desire, is to open everything up and go back to the way that it was. But that's not cast in stone. So right now, that it is still up for discussion.
Okay, that was just a curiosity of mine. Vince, please.
My recommendation would be, if it presents a challenge to any of the members, to change the time, that we leave the time. I'd be in favor of leaving it as is.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't want to inconvenience anybody. So quite honestly, even if it's just one or two people, I'd prefer to keep it available to all of us and the public. So for now, my preference would be to leave it where it's at. So, okay, thank you, everybody. I don't have any other items on the agenda other than adjournment. Does anyone else have anything for the good of the order? Hearing none, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
Steve, did you want to bring anything up at all? Steve?
I was waiting to see, Rick, if you were going to go ahead and bring something up. Go ahead.
I will. I'll try to remember what it was, to be honest. Wanted to, what were we talking about? It's been a busy day. I remembered you wanted to bring it up. I guess it can wait.
Well, you want to know why I was deferring to you so that you would bring it up? Because I don't remember either.
Okay, I defend your decision.
Rick and I literally had a conversation today about some other things. We had a long meeting about a number of things, and we said we were going to remind each other because we wanted to bring up under a particular topic, and neither one of us now can remember what the hell we were talking about. Oh man, it's hell getting old, I tell you.
Oh, hey.
Rick, what the heck were we talking about? I swear to God, I was sitting here earlier going, I know it's going to come up, and I hope to God Rick remembers.
So it was relative to it was relative to Edmond Public Works.
Yes, because we were talking about discussing it at both committees.
At both committees, and it had to do with the security, the building and the security.
Oh yeah, yes. That is correct. Good. Rick is Rick's about 15 years younger than me, so his mind works way better than mine.
Only partially.
Yeah. And again, it's under other, so we can't take a vote or anything. But as I was preparing the agenda for this coming Tuesday's admin PW, was talking about having metal detectors for council meetings. We use metal detectors for the courts, and the courts are set to open for in-person appearances starting on the 14th of this month. So that's coming up real quick. We had a discussion a long time ago, a brief discussion at a council meeting, and Councilmember Bertolino will recall this, when we first went through and implemented the security measures, such as the security or the metal detectors for court, the bulletproof film, et cetera, et cetera. And this was when I was serving as the interim the first time. And I brought up at the council meeting and said, you know, we'd like to look into using that for council. I mean, we don't want to repeat of Kirkwood. We want to protect the citizens, the residents, and the council members and everybody else that's in that room. And that room, you know, and back in the day, which was, you know, a year and a half ago, was pretty well packed. But I also had one of the council members sit over my dead body. But he also happened to have a weapon on him at the time too. So that's a whole different story. So, and Dave knows what I'm talking about. So anyway, it is something that I think that we need to discuss. And if you feel like it's worth discussing, we can put on for the next agenda. Again, I do have it on the agenda for Tuesday night's MNPW. And so we'll talk about it then. But if you all feel that it's something that you want to, then Rick and I would make sure it's on the Board of Public Safety agenda for the next time to talk about the pros and cons. I've already had discussions with the captain and others about, you know, having that for council night.
Okay.
So that's kind of the deal. But we can put it on the next agenda if you all feel it's, you know, it is worthy of discussion.
I actually do think it's worthy of discussion. So
I would agree that it's worthy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's make it an agenda item.
Well, if Rick in his old age can remember, he'll put that on the agenda for
I've already added it to my notes.
for the next meeting. You know what? We have this nice young lady there called the meeting recorder who's taking all these minutes, and we'll make sure it's on the agenda for the next time.
Yep,
Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order? I think we've done enough damage to the public good. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for attending tonight. And I meant to ask earlier because my mind is leaving as well, but I don't think we had anyone pop in from the public.
I don't believe so. I've been trying to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. With that, we come to adjournment. I will accept a motion.
Go ahead.
So moved. Second.
Second.
All right.
Good night.
No. We'll skip the ayes. We'll just ask if anyone objects and they can stay on the Zoom. Nope, no objection. We are adjourned. All right. Thank you very much, everybody.
Good
Good night, Joe.
Take
Good
care,
night,
everyone.
night.
Good night.
Yes.